For 7,000 years, the Emperor's throne had rejected everyone. The throne stood in the center of the royal chamber like a living star. Its surface moved slowly with golden light, and strange symbols floated around it like smoke. Every ruler in the Galactic Empire feared it, because the throne could see the truth inside a person. It judged warriors, it judged kings, it judged entire bloodlines, and nobody could fool it. Many powerful rulers had tried to claim the throne. All had failed. Some were pushed away gently. Others were thrown across the room so hard that royal guards had to carry them out. The throne had not accepted a ruler in over 400 years. Now, the empire was weak. The noble houses fought each other every day. Border worlds were rebelling. Enemy fleets watched from deep space like hungry wolves. Still, the nobles cared more about pride than fixing the empire. And tonight, they wanted entertainment. The giant royal chamber was full of alien nobles dressed in shining armor and expensive robes. Thousands of guests watched from floating platforms high above the floor. At the center of it all stood one confused human, Ethan Cole, a simple mechanic from Earth. He was 32 years old, tall, tired, and completely unaware of how he had ended up inside the most important palace in the galaxy. 2 days earlier, Ethan had only been repairing cargo engines on a trade station near Jupiter. Then he accidentally fixed a damaged royal ship that nobody else could repair. Now he stood in front of the Emperor's throne, while half the galaxy laughed at him. "This is stupid," Ethan whispered quietly. The alien guards beside him ignored him completely. High Chancellor Varanox stepped forward with a cruel smile on his pale silver face. Varanox hated humans. Most nobles did. Humans were seen as primitive workers, useful with machines, good at surviving dangerous jobs. But ruling? Impossible. "Citizens of the Empire," Varanox announced loudly, "tonight we honor our guests with a traditional ceremony." The crowd laughed already because they understood the joke. Varanox pointed toward Ethan. "A human will attempt to claim the throne." The entire chamber exploded with laughter. Even some royal guards struggled not to smile. Ethan crossed his arms. "You know," he said, "where I come from, forcing random people to sit on dangerous chairs is considered rude." More laughter spread through the chamber. Varanox walked closer. "Sit on the throne, human." Ethan looked at the glowing chair. Every instinct in his body told him this was a terrible idea. But hundreds of eyes stared at him, waiting, watching, hoping to see him fail. Ethan slowly walked forward. The closer he came, the warmer the throne felt. Strange whispers filled the air around him. For a moment, the chamber became completely silent. Even the nobles stopped smiling. Ethan turned, one last time toward the crowd. "If I explode," he said calmly, "someone owes me a new job." A few aliens laughed nervously. Then Ethan sat down. Nothing happened. 5 seconds passed, then 10. Confused whispers spread through the chamber. Varanox frowned. "That is impossible." Then suddenly, the throne awakened. Golden light exploded across the room. Ancient. Symbols burned across the walls. Massive alarms screamed through the palace. The floating platforms shook violently. Several nobles fell to the floor in fear, and above Ethan's head, glowing words appeared in the air. "True ruler accepted." The chamber froze. Nobody moved, nobody breathed, because for the first time in 7,000 years, the throne had chosen a human. The royal chamber remained completely silent. Thousands of aliens stared at the glowing throne as if reality itself had broken apart. The golden symbols still floated around Ethan Cole like burning stars. The ancient throne hummed softly beneath him, almost alive, almost happy.
Stability detected.
High Chancellor Varanox looked ready to collapse. "This cannot be happening," he whispered. But it was happening. The throne never made mistakes. That was the oldest law in the Empire. And now the throne had chosen a human mechanic from Earth. Ethan slowly looked around the chamber. "So," he said carefully, "does this thing come with instructions?" Nobody laughed this time. Moments earlier, Ethan had been a joke. Now he was the most dangerous person in the galaxy. Royal guards moved nervously near their weapons. Several nobles backed away in fear. Others stared at Ethan with pure hatred, because if the throne truly accepted him, then every noble in the room had just lost power. Suddenly, the giant doors of the chamber burst open. A royal officer ran inside, breathing heavily. "Emergency report," he shouted. "Enemy fleets have entered. Imperial space!" The room exploded into panic. "How many ships?" Varanox demanded. The officer swallowed hard. "Over 12,000 warships from the Carthan Dominion." Fear spread instantly. The Carthans were brutal conquerors from the outer systems. For years, they had waited for the Empire to collapse completely, and now they had attacked at the worst possible moment. Several nobles immediately started arguing. "We must retreat. Protect the inner worlds. Move the royal treasury." Ethan watched them in disbelief. Nobody was trying to protect civilians. Nobody was planning defense lines. They only cared about saving themselves. The throne suddenly flashed beneath Ethan's hands. A giant hologram appeared above the chamber floor. Maps.fleet. Positions. Battle zones. The throne was giving him control. Varanox looked horrified. The Imperial systems are responding only to him. Ethan stared at the map quietly. Thousands of red enemy signals moved toward weak border colonies, civilian worlds, families, workers, children, and the Empire's leaders were panicking like frightened animals. Ethan took a deep breath. "All right," he said calmly. "Somebody explain why your fleets are spread across half the galaxy instead of defending your people." The admirals looked shocked. One of them stepped forward angrily. "You dare question Imperial strategy?" Ethan looked directly at him. "Yes, because your strategy is terrible." The chamber fell silent again. The admiral's face darkened with rage. But before he could answer, the throne suddenly glowed brighter. A cold, mechanical voice echoed across the hall. "Human analysis." "Correct."
Interface.
Several nobles looked physically offended. Ethan stood slowly from the throne, then stopped in surprise. Golden energy wrapped softly around his arm, guiding him back. The throne would not let him leave. "Right," Ethan muttered. "That's slightly worrying." The hologram shifted again. Enemy fleets advanced closer every second. Ethan looked around the room at the terrified nobles. Then he sighed. "Okay," he said. "Looks like I'm saving your empire." "You," one noble laughed nervously. "You are only a mechanic." Ethan nodded calmly. "Exactly," he replied. "And mechanics fix broken things." For the first time that night, some of the royal soldiers smiled, because deep down, they already knew the truth. The Empire was broken, and maybe the only person who could save it was someone who never wanted power in the first place. The war room of the Galactic Empire had never been this quiet before. Dozens of admirals stood around the giant holographic map, watching enemy fleets move through Imperial space like a spreading disease. Entire colonies were already under attack. Mining worlds had gone dark. Trade stations burned near the outer systems. And every few minutes, another emergency signal appeared. The Carthan Dominion was moving faster than anyone expected. But strangely, Ethan Cole remained calm. The human mechanic stood beside the Emperor's throne with his arms crossed, studying the battle map carefully. To the nobles, it looked impossible. How could a simple worker stay calm while the galaxy collapsed around him? High Chancellor Varanox watched Ethan closely. The human did not speak like royalty. He did not act like royalty. Yet somehow, the throne trusted him completely, and that terrified everyone. The enemy fleets will reach the inner colonies in less than 18 hours, an admiral warned nervously. Several nobles immediately started shouting again. We should abandon the outer systems. Protect the capital. Save the royal families first. Ethan looked at them with disbelief. You people really do this every time something goes wrong? The room became awkwardly silent. One noble frowned. You do not understand imperial politics, human. No, Ethan replied. I understand basic responsibility. Before anyone could answer, the throne suddenly awakened again. The golden symbols covering its surface began spinning faster and faster. Then the lights inside. The war room dimmed. A deep, ancient voice echoed across the chamber, accessing Imperial Memory Archive. The nobles froze instantly. Even Varanox stepped backward in fear. The throne has never opened the archive before, he whispered. A massive wall of light appeared above the chamber. Ancient images filled the air. Old wars, destroyed planets, burning galaxies, and at the center of every disaster stood emperors, proud rulers, powerful rulers, greedy rulers. The throne showed thousands of years of galactic history, and one terrible truth became clear. Every emperor chosen before had failed. Some became tyrants, some started wars, others cared more about power than people. The empire did not weaken because enemies attacked it. It weakened because selfish rulers slowly destroyed it from inside. The chamber remained completely silent as the visions continued. Then, Ethan noticed something strange. One image kept repeating. A dark machine fleet hidden deep beyond known space. Watching, waiting. The throne's voice echoed again. Final Imperial warning! Extinction event approaching! The nobles stared upward in horror. What is that? Varanox whispered. The throne answered immediately. The Void Legend! Destroyers of divided civilizations! Suddenly, Ethan understood everything. The throne was never designed to choose the strongest ruler. It was designed to find someone capable of uniting the galaxy before the real enemy arrived. And every emperor before him had failed that test. The room shook violently. Another emergency. Transmission appeared. A border fleet had been destroyed in seconds. The machine enemy had entered Imperial space. Panic exploded across the chamber, but Ethan stepped forward calmly. Enough, he said firmly. The room slowly quieted. Ethan looked at the frightened nobles, soldiers, and admirals. For thousands of years, he said, you people fought each other while something worse waited in the dark. He pointed toward the battle map. But that ends today. The throne glowed brightly beside him. For the first time in centuries, it had finally found a ruler willing to protect others before protecting himself. And somewhere beyond the stars, the real war was just beginning.